When you picture a company's executive leadership team, you probably imagine them in this, glass-walled boardroom,
Mhm.
huddled around market analyses, just relentlessly plotting their next brilliant strategic move.
Right, because we just naturally assume that if someone is at the top of the food chain, they're constantly thinking about strategy.
Exactly. But the actual data paints a totally different picture. Get this. 85% of executive leadership teams spend less than 1 hour per month discussing strategy.
Wow, 1 hour.
1 hour a month. And here's the truly shocking part. 50% spend absolutely no time on it at all.
You know, it is a startling reality, but it makes sense. In our modern business culture, we're just completely obsessed with speed and execution.
You're just constantly doing so.
Exactly. Taking the time to actually stop, step back, and think it's mistakenly viewed as a luxury. Sometimes it's even punished, like it's a lack of productivity.
Why are you sitting there looking out the window?
Right. You're supposed to be visibly doing something at all times. But, I mean, running as fast as you can in the wrong direction is just the most efficient way to fail.
Which is exactly why we are jumping right into this deep dive today.
Hmm.
Because I know you listening to this right now are likely juggling a dozen tasks.
Mhm.
You're feeling incredibly busy. Your calendar is overflowing.
Back-to-back meetings.
Always. But maybe you just aren't seeing the needle move in your career or your business the way you want. You're putting in the hours, but the impact just isn't scaling.
Yeah, you're stuck in the weeds.
Right. So our mission today is to transform you from someone who is simply, going through the motions of passive experience into a master of active expertise. We are analyzing a proven framework developed by Rich Horwath for building strategy, focusing your resources, and actually taking smart action.
And what's fascinating here is the critical distinction he makes between strategic planning and strategic thinking, because they are not the same thing.
Oh, definitely not.
Strategic planning is an event. We all know it. It's that annual offsite meeting where everyone builds a budget, slaps some optimistic projections onto a PowerPoint slide, puts it in a binder, and
Puts the binder on a dusty shelf forever.
exactly, never to be seen again. But strategic thinking is a daily mindset. It is the continuous, ongoing generation of insights to achieve a competitive advantage.
And the stakes for getting this right are just incredibly high. I mean, studies show that 87% of companies eventually suffer a stall point.
Right, that prolonged financial decline.
Yeah, where they lose, on average, 74% of their market capitalization. And 70% of those catastrophic stall points are not caused by bad economies or, unpredictable black swan events.
No, they're caused by poor strategic choices made by the leadership.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if executives aren't spending time on strategy, what are they actually doing? And more importantly for you listening, what kind of thinker are you? I feel like most managers I know are just treading water, constantly putting out daily tactical fires. Does the data back that up?
It absolutely does. Horwath uses this really intuitive underwater diving analogy to categorize the 4 types of strategic thinkers we encounter in the workplace.
Okay, I love a good analogy.
Right. So first, you have the beach bums. This makes up about 9% of managers.
Let me guess, they don't even get in the water.
They literally just sit on the shore. They offer 0 business insights and just watch the waves come in.
Ouch. Okay.
Then you have the snorkelers. That's a bigger group, 26% of managers. They're swimming right at the surface, offering tactical but ultimately low-impact solutions.
So they're just fixing the immediate problems directly in front of their diving masks.
Exactly. They never look down into the depths.
And I imagine the deeper you go, the rarer the skills become, right?
Precisely. 32% of managers are scuba divers. Now, these individuals are capable of producing great, deep insights, but only when they are heavily equipped and explicitly guided.
So they need the annual planning retreat.
They need the retreat, the massive data packets, the outside facilitator. Their insights are good, but they are incredibly infrequent.
Right, it's not a daily habit.
No. Finally, you have the ideal state, the freedivers. Making up roughly 33% of managers, these are the people who dive into the depths without all the heavy apparatus.
They just hold their breath and go.
Yeah, they generate business-transforming insights continually as a completely natural part of their daily routine. They don't need an offsite retreat to do it.
I look at experience in the workplace almost like cholesterol.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, passive experience, just showing up, answering emails, doing the same task year after year without reflection, it's like bad cholesterol, LDL. It just slowly clogs up your career and your organization's arteries until everything stalls.
That's a great way to put it.
Right. but active, insight-driven experience. That freediver mentality you just described, that's the good cholesterol. It's the HDL that keeps a business healthy and pumping. But I have to ask, if being a freediver is so incredibly valuable, why do we have so many snorkelers? Why isn't everyone choosing to dive deep?
Well, it really comes down to a fundamental psychological barrier regarding risk.
Risk.
Yeah, because becoming a freediver requires making hard trade-offs. You have to commit to a direction, and human beings naturally avoid risk.
We want to play it safe.
Exactly. In most corporate environments, sins of commission, meaning you tried a bold new strategy and it failed, those are punished much more harshly than sins of omission.
Where you just play it safe, do what everyone else is doing, and slowly miss out on opportunities over time.
Right. It feels much safer for your career to snorkel. True strategy requires focus, and focus requires saying no to things, which inherently puts a target on your back if things go wrong.
Which means if we genuinely want to be freedivers, we have to recognize and strip away the false definitions of strategy that keep us snorkeling at the surface to begin with.
We do. And Horwath breaks down the ABCs of what strategy is not.
Right, the ABCs. A is aspiration. Saying your strategy is like to be the market leader or to hit 10 million in revenue. That is not a strategy.
That is a goal. It's the what, not the how.
Exactly. Then B is best practices. And C is caution, spreading your resources evenly across every department just to avoid rocking the boat.
Which is a huge trap.
I do struggle with the best practices idea, though. I mean, if my competitor figures out a faster, cheaper way to ship their products and I stubbornly refuse to copy their best practice, I'm going to lose customers. How is ignoring a best practice not just a death sentence?
Okay, if we connect this to the bigger picture, copying best practices isn't inherently bad, but it is not strategy. It falls under the category of operational effectiveness.
Okay, what's the difference?
When you focus solely on best practices, you are essentially running the exact same race as your competitors, just trying to run a tiny bit faster.
It's a little more efficient.
Yeah, and that is a wolf in strategy's clothing. Because if everyone in your industry adopts the exact same CRM software, the exact same supply chain tactics, the exact same hiring matrices, all differentiation completely fades away.
Oh, I see. You just blend in.
Your company starts to look identical to the customer. And when there is no difference in value, what's the only thing left to compete on?
Price.
Price. It becomes a race to the bottom, shrinking margins until nobody can survive. True strategy doesn't mean running the same race faster. It means designing your own race course.
So it's not about being better, it's about being fundamentally unique. Horwath points to this fascinating 1934 experiment by a scientist named G.F. Gauss to prove this.
Oh, the paramecium experiment.
Yes. So Gauss took two different species of paramecium single-celled organisms and put them into a test tube with a limited food supply. And what he discovered became known as the principle of competitive exclusion.
Which states what, exactly?
He found that two species literally cannot coexist if they make their living the exact same way. One will inevitably wipe the other out. You survive by being different.
Exactly. And in business, you avoid being wiped out by finding a totally different way to make your living. Look at Johnny Cash and the original Mini Cooper.
What a combo.
Right. But objectively speaking, Johnny Cash did not have the quote-unquote best technical singing voice of his era, and the Mini Cooper was certainly not the highest performance nor the most comfortable car on the market.
Not at all.
But they both won massive, deeply loyal audiences because they were fiercely different in ways that their specific target customers actually valued. They didn't try to be everything to everyone.
And there are multiple ways to execute that difference, right? Take the classic battle of Netflix versus Blockbuster compared to Enterprise Rent-A-Car versus Hertz.
Oh, this is a great comparison.
Yeah, so Netflix took the path of performing completely different activities. Instead of opening expensive brick-and-mortar video stores, they built distribution hubs, mailed DVDs, and eventually coded streaming algorithms.
Totally different playbook.
But Enterprise took the second path. They performed similar activities to Hertz and Avis. They all rent cars. But Enterprise did it in a completely different way.
Right, they avoided the airports.
Exactly. Instead of fighting for expensive real estate at airport terminals to serve business travelers, Enterprise put older cars in local neighborhoods, delivered the cars directly to people whose vehicles were in the repair shop, and hired recent college grads to run the branches.
Which leads directly to the next major hurdle. Once you accept that strategy requires being fundamentally different, how do you confidently pick the right path without bankrupting the company.
You can't just guess.
No, you have to actively build an absolute competitive advantage.
And here's where it gets really interesting. To explain absolute competitive advantage, there is this incredible analogy from nature. The wood frog.
The Phrasen frog.
Yes, this frog lives in the freezing mountains of North America. When winter comes, it doesn't just hide under a rock or migrate south. It literally freezes its own blood.
Just turns to ice, solid ice. It packs its cells with a natural antifreeze. It stops breathing. Its heart completely stops beating, and it goes into total suspended animation. It essentially dies.
It's wild.
Then in the spring, it thaws out, its heart restarts, and it wakes up to enjoy its territory completely alone, having survived extreme conditions that killed or drove away all of its competitors.
It is a remarkable survival mechanism, and competitive advantage in business is exactly like that wood frog's antifreeze.
It keeps you alive when everyone else freezes.
Right. It allows you to survive harsh market conditions like economic downturns, supply chain shocks, and thrive without direct threats, because your underlying system can withstand pressures your competitors simply cannot.
And how do we actually build that antifreeze?
In the corporate world, you build it by choosing one specific value discipline to obsess over. Research on market-leading companies shows there are 3 primary value disciplines: product leadership, operational excellence, and customer intimacy. Let's break those down. Product leadership is having the absolute best, most innovative, cutting-edge product on the market. Think Apple or Nike pouring massive resources into research and design, knowing they can charge a premium.
Yeah, people will line up for the best product.
Operational excellence is entirely about having the best total cost and efficiency, getting the product to the consumer fast and cheap. Think Walmart, FedEx, or Southwest Airlines.
Exactly. Highly streamlined.
And customer intimacy is providing the best, tailored, total solution for a specific client. It's built on deep, personalized relationships. Think IBM customizing IT infrastructure for a hospital, or Nordstrom's legendary customer service.
Now, this raises an important question, and honestly, it's the hardest part for most executives to stomach.
What's that?
A successful company must deliberately excel at only one of these 3 disciplines.
Only one.
Only one, while merely maintaining baseline average thresholds in the other 2. As we discussed, human nature craves equilibrium. We want to be loved by everyone for everything, so a leadership team naturally defaults to spreading their budget and their talent evenly across product R&D, supply chain operations, and customer service. But doing that is a fatal error.
It makes me think of creating a character in a role-playing video game.
Ah, how so?
Well, you start the game with a limited number of skill points to spend, right?
Yeah.
If you try to make your character perfectly balanced, putting a few points in magic, a few points in stealth, and a few points in brute strength, you just become perfectly average at everything.
A master of none.
Exactly. And you are going to get absolutely crushed by the very first boss you face. You have to commit to a class, you put every single point you have into strength, and you just accept the fact that your character is going to be terrible at magic.
That makes perfect sense.
In business, if you spread your resources evenly across all 3 disciplines, you create a fractured internal direction, a confused brand in the marketplace, and ultimately you just become a commodity.
That is a perfect way to visualize it. It takes immense discipline to look at 2 vital areas of your business and intentionally say, we are only going to be average here, so that you can obsess over being extraordinary in the 3rd.
Yeah, that takes guts.
But to confidently commit all your resources to a single value discipline, you need profound intelligence about your market. You can't just pick one out of a hat. Which brings us to the first core discipline of strategic thinking: acumen.
Acumen. This is the act of diving for insights. When we look at a market, the surface-level data is like the ripples on the top of the ocean. It's the standard pricing, the basic features, the obvious demographic shifts. Everyone can see the ripple.
Right, your competitors see that too.
Exactly. But subsurface insights are like the tectonic plates shifting miles below the surface. That is where the massive landscape-altering energy actually is.
Can you give an example?
Take Red Hat software as an example of seeing the tectonic plates.
Mm.
They looked at the market and saw 2 obvious surface-level business models. Either you sell open-source software for super cheap, or you sell proprietary closed software for a high price.
The standard options.
Right. But Red Hat dove deeper and asked a different question. They found a subsurface insight. What if we take the cheap open-source software and give it away, but charge a high premium for a proprietary service and consulting model to help corporations integrate it.
Brilliant.
That insight created a massive competitive advantage.
To consistently generate those kinds of subsurface insights, freedivers rely on a few specific tools. One of the most important is thoroughly analyzing context your environment.
Okay, how do they do that?
To decode context, elite strategic thinkers use the ODA loop. Observe, orient, decide, act. It was actually developed by a military strategist, and the hardest step is the second one, orient.
Not observe.
No, observing data is easy. We have dashboards for that. But orienting means filtering that data through your own biases, recognizing how the landscape is fundamentally shifting, and adjusting your mental models before you make a decision. Failing to continuously orient to your context leads to the trap of prescription without diagnosis.
Oh, and there's so many tragic examples of incredibly talented people ignoring shifting context.
Like what?
There was a famous world-renowned restaurant in Chicago called Le Francais. Perfect food, perfect service, same dedicated staff for 20 years. But it closed its doors.
Why? Did the food get worse?
No. The context around them changed. The neighborhood evolved, the dining habits of their clientele shifted toward more casual experiences, and they didn't orient to the new reality. Or look at Katie Couric.
Oh, from the Today Show.
Yeah, she had massive historic success anchoring the Today Show, but when she moved to anchor the CBS Evening News, it was a ratings disaster. She had the exact same talent, but the context of the format and audience expectations was completely different. Context is everything.
Another critical source for generating insight is how you approach your customers. But this requires a major shift in thinking. Bob Lutz, the former vice chairman of General Motors, famously said that the customer is, at best, a rear-view mirror.
A rear-view mirror.
Yeah. They are excellent at telling you what they like among the choices that already exist in the world, but they are terrible at predicting their own future needs.
Wait, I have to challenge that. In almost every corporate office, the quote-unquote voice of the customer is basically a religion. We send out surveys, we do focus groups, we calculate net promoter scores. Are you saying that asking the customer what they want is actually bad strategy?
Well, not bad, but highly limited. Customers are fantastic at telling you how to incrementally fix a current product. They will tell you to make the screen brighter, or the battery last longer, or the price 10% cheaper.
Yeah.
But they cannot invent the future. Before the invention of the light bulb, if you surveyed customers, they would have just asked for a candle that burns twice as long. They didn't ask for the minivan, and they didn't ask for the iPhone.
Okay, so what do we do instead?
Instead of just logging their verbal requests, we have to observe their behaviors and their frustrations. Toyota uses a brilliant method called Genshi Genbutsu, which translates to go and see.
Go and see.
Don't bring a customer into a sterile conference room and ask them what they want. Go out into the field, watch them actually struggle with their daily tasks, see where they get frustrated, and invent the solution they didn't even know was physically possible.
You know, James Dyson famously said he loved frustration because every time he saw someone frustrated by a daily task, he saw a billion-dollar market waiting for a solution.
Exactly.
Okay, so we observe our context and we watch our customers struggle. But how do we force our own brains to look at those observations differently? Horwath recommends a framework called Scamper, which is a series of prompts to force new perspectives. Let's just focus on the R in Scamper, which stands for reverse.
Reverse. I like that one.
Yeah. It forces you to look at a standard industry practice and ask, what if we did the exact opposite? I want the listener to think about the biggest, most stubborn problem on your desk right now. Seriously, picture it. If you apply the reverse tactic to it, what would the exact opposite of your current proposed solution look like?
Right. Give me an example.
If your problem is that your sales team isn't closing enough outbound cold calls, the standard fix is make more cold calls.
Obviously.
The reverse is, how do we stop making cold calls entirely and force the customer to call us? It is a mental speed bump that forces you out of your cognitive ruts.
And once you have gone through that process, once you have decoded your context, watched your customers, and forced new perspectives to find that brilliant subsurface insight, you hit the ultimate bottleneck.
Which is?
Insight without action is just trivia. Which brings us to the second core discipline of strategic thinking. Allocation.
Allocation. Using our air. You finally have the insight, now you have to actually do something about it. Strategy is truly defined by where you put your resources. A company's realized strategy, the one that actually exists in the real world regardless of what the mission statement says, is nothing more than the sum of its daily resource allocation decisions.
Exactly. And leaders have three distinct types of resources to allocate. Tangible resources, like financial budgets and physical assets. Intangible resources, like brand reputation and company culture. And human resources, which really boils down to time, focus, and talent.
It is so easy to fall into the trap of thinking that tangible resources, just having the biggest budget, is the only thing that dictates who wins.
Oh, people think that all the time.
But look at the New York Yankees versus the Cleveland Indians in the 2007 baseball playoffs.
Right.
The Yankees had a massive payroll of $207 million.
Yeah.
They bought the most expensive talent on the market.
Right.
Cleveland's payroll was only $61 million. And yet, Cleveland completely dismantled the Yankees and knocked them out of the playoffs. Why? Because strategy beats sheer budget. How you deploy your human talent and build an intangible culture of cohesion can overcome a massive deficit in tangible cash.
But managing those human resources, specifically time and focus, is where most leaders fail. Research highlights that a staggering 90% of managers squander their time on ineffective activities.
90%.
Yes. They are incredibly busy, but they aren't impactful. Only 10% spend their time in a committed, purposeful, and strategically reflective manner. When we fail to prioritize our most precious resource, the time and mental energy of our team just leaks out into the water.
I want you to think about your own calendar this past week. Open it up and look at the blocks of time. If a completely objective outside auditor came in, looked at where you actually spent your hours, and tracked your daily decisions, would they be able to guess what your top strategic priority is? Or is your strategic oxygen leaking out into useless status update meetings, endless reply-all email chains, and putting out tactical fires that someone else should be handling?
This raises an important question. That audit is the painful core of the allocation discipline. It is the realization that saying no to perfectly good opportunities is the absolute only way you can fund great opportunities.
Saying no is so hard.
It is. Allocation isn't just about authorizing a budget. It is about fiercely hoarding your team's focus. If you move your best engineer off a safe legacy product to work on a risky new prototype, you are shifting the realized strategy of the entire company. You are protecting their oxygen so they have the air they need when it's time to dive deep.
So what does this all mean? Let's bring this whole framework together. If you want to move from just piling up passive experience to actually building active market-shifting expertise, you have to fundamentally change your relationship with strategy. You have to abandon the comfortable safety of industry best practices.
Yes.
You have to bravely choose to be different and commit to just one value discipline, even if it means intentionally being average at the others.
Yeah.
You need to dive deep below the surface-level data to find contextual insights. And then you have to ruthlessly allocate your resources, your budget, your talent, and your calendar to actually execute on those insights.
And implementing all of this requires a fundamental shift in how we measure our own professional value. You know, it's often said that raw experience is highly overrated.
Really?
In fact, research points out that raw experience is only the 5th best predictor of job success. Think about the implications of that. Passive experience, just doing the same thing year after year, actually breeds obsolescence. If we accept that this is true, it forces us to reconsider how we evaluate our own career trajectories. Perhaps we should stop counting the years of experience on our resumes entirely. What if the only metric that truly matters, the only real indicator of our value, is our number of implemented insights?
Oh man, I love that framing. Implemented insights over years of experience, that completely changes how I'm going to look at my very next project. We don't want to just be beach bums sitting on the shore, watching the years roll by and hoping we get promoted based on tenure. We want to be free divers, taking that deep breath, plunging into the unknown and bringing something incredibly valuable back up to the surface. Thank you all for taking the plunge with us today. Look at your calendars, hoard your oxygen, keep learning, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.